Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've ever lost someone or, if you're navigating a profound loss right now, you already know firsthand that grief is not just some passing emotional state, right? It is a profound, incredibly heavy, whole body experience that can honestly leave you feeling completely altered. Today, we're exploring the neuroscience of grief, and it's a truly fascinating topic to uncover, largely because we so often think of grief purely as emotional pain, just this overwhelming sadness that we have to somehow endure. But when you look deeply into the source material, a totally different picture emerges. Under the hood, grief is actually a rigorous, incredibly active biological learning process. We literally all have to navigate it eventually, whether that means the loss of a loved one, the end of a deeply significant relationship, or even just the total collapse of a deeply held dream about your future. By understanding the underlying biology of what is actually happening inside our brains, we can start to frame grief not just as this painful burden we're forced to carry, but as an incredible biological process of adaptation. We are going to explore this together today and really map out exactly how the brain learns to let go, adapt, and ultimately heal. It is one of the most common, heartbreaking things people ask when they are really in the thick of it. If we logically know someone is gone, why on earth doesn't the pain just disappear? Intellectually, we process the fact of loss almost immediately. You get the devastating phone call, you hear the news, and your conscious, logical mind understands the fact right then and there. But biologically, our brain entirely rejects that premise at first. There is this confusing, agonizing gap between knowing someone has passed intellectually and your nervous system actually believing they are gone on a fundamental neurological level. It's kind of like the profound difference between memorizing a new fact from a textbook and having to completely rewrite a deeply ingrained physical habit. The mind knows, sure, but the body hasn't caught up yet. And living in that gap, it is utterly exhausting. Okay, let's dive into this, because what's truly mind-blowing in the source material is the realization that grief isn't just emotional. It is deeply, deeply biological. In fact, this is the entire foundation of how modern neuroscience views loss. Grief is the nervous system actively, forcefully working to update its reality. Modern neuroscience tells us that the severe pain we feel is actually the literal, physical effort of our brain trying to reconcile two completely different realities. It's not merely sadness hovering over you like a dark cloud. It is literal structural remodeling happening inside your head. Old neural pathways are being pruned, and brand new ones are actively being built. Now, understanding this doesn't magically wipe away the emotional pain, of course, but what it does do is remove a lot of the confusion. It validates exactly why you might feel so profoundly disoriented, scattered, and physically exhausted when you're grieving. Your brain is essentially doing heavy lifting around the clock. Section 1, the brain's relationship map. To really grasp what's happening when we grieve, we first have to look at the geography of the brain before a loss even occurs. Think of your brain as this master cartographer. It doesn't just map out the physical world, like the exact route you take to the grocery store or where the coffee mugs are in your kitchen. No, it is constantly building these intricate, deeply wired internal maps of your social connections. It maps the people you love just as strictly as it maps the ground you walk on. There are three main dimensions to this internal map. First is space. Your brain subconsciously tracks where a loved one usually is. It knows their favorite spot on the couch or exactly which side of the bed they sleep on. Second is time. Your brain inherently tracks when you last saw them, your frequency of communication, and exactly when it expects you'll interact with them again. Maybe it expects a text message every single day at 5 p.m. on the dot when they get off work. And third is emotional closeness. The closer you are to someone emotionally, the more deep neural real estate they occupy in your mind. A spouse, a parent, or a child takes up massive amounts of neurological bandwidth compared to just a casual acquaintance. Over years and years, your brain has physically and chemically wired itself entirely around their existence. Section 2, grief as prediction error. So, what actually happens when reality violently shifts? When a loss occurs, this meticulously built, deeply ingrained relationship map is suddenly shattered. And this brings us to one of the absolutely crucial concepts in the neuroscience of grief: prediction error. A prediction error is the painful mismatch between what the brain expects to happen and what reality actually presents. Think about this using a GPS analogy. Your brain is trying to route you down a relationship road that simply no longer exists. Modern science views the brain primarily as a prediction machine. Its whole job, its main biological imperative, is to constantly guess what happens next to keep you safe and functioning. When someone dies, your internal GPS is still saying, turn left to see them, but you turn the corner and the road is just completely gone. Your brain experiences that jarring recalculating panic. The software needs time to update, but in the meantime, every single time that GPS fails and leads you to a dead end, it hurts on a deeply visceral level. And this brilliantly illustrates what we're talking about. On one hand, the brain's deeply wired prediction engine fires. They should be here. But reality coldly responds, they are not here. This simple mechanical mismatch explains those terrifying, heartbreaking moments that catch you completely off guard, like when you automatically reach for your phone to text someone who has passed because something funny happened at work, or you vividly expect to hear their key turning in the door at the exact time they always came home. Actually, think about that for a second. Your brain's prediction engine is firing perfectly. It's doing exactly what it has done for years. It's just doing its job. But the sudden, jarring collision between that neural prediction and the cold, hard reality is what creates that sharp, acute stab of grief. Every single reminder, every habit becomes a brand new prediction error. This deeply affects our sense of time, too. You see, our relationships are built heavily on episodic memory. Those shared past experiences, the family vacations, the inside jokes that literally only the two of you understand. Those memories, they remain completely intact, but they were intrinsically tied to future expectations, the vacation you were planning for next year, growing old together, or honestly, simply the mundane expectation of sharing a cup of coffee tomorrow morning. When a loss occurs, it's like a bridge completely collapsing. Your mind gets caught in this incredibly painful gap. You are constantly revisiting those beautiful, crystal clear old shared memories while simultaneously grappling with the complete and sudden disappearance of your anticipated future. It's like finding yourself setting the table for two out of pure habit, and then the realization comes crashing down that the future expectation is just gone. Section 3, the biology of yearning. Let's look closely at the physical toll this map rewriting takes on the body. A lot of people feel like they are quite literally physically breaking down when they lose someone. I want to validate that for you right now. Your confusing, exhausting bodily symptoms are not in your head. Well, actually, scratch that. They are in your brain, but you know what I mean. They are completely normal biological responses to a massive systemic shock. Now, what's really interesting about the slide is how directly it maps the symptom to the science. It turns out that intense yearning you feel is driven directly by active attachment systems and oxytocin. It's not just a sad feeling you can shake off, it's an active, powerful biological drive to seek them out. What about sleep disruption? That is your stress system and cortisol flooding your body, keeping you awake because your brain actually perceives their absence as an absolute life-threatening emergency. And the total bone-deep exhaustion? Remapping an entire neural network consumes massive amounts of neural energy. Your brain is literally burning extra calories trying to figure out this bizarre new reality. So no wonder you feel like you've run a marathon just by existing. There's this incredible research in the source material regarding that intense yearning, and it ties back to a hormone you've probably heard of, oxytocin. It's often called the bonding or love hormone. We are fundamentally wired for attachment at a biological level. Neuroscientists have actually studied this extensively in prairie voles. They're these tiny mammals that are famous in the scientific community because they mate for life and form incredibly strong pair bonds, much like humans do. Research shows that variations in how oxytocin receptors are distributed in the brain actually dictate how deeply we attach to another being. What this means is that yearning isn't just a psychological phase. It is an intensely physical state dictated by neurochemistry. It also brilliantly explains why grief varies so dramatically from person to person. Based on your unique biological attachment wiring, how your specific oxytocin receptors are mapped, your brain is going to process the loss completely differently than your neighbor or even your sibling. Section 4, tools to rewire the brain. How do we actually start helping the brain heal? At this point, you might be thinking this is all incredibly heavy, and it undeniably is. But here is the empowering pivot. Because we know this is a biological process of learning and rewiring, we also have concrete science-based solutions that can actively support the nervous system in its recovery. The first tool is actually something to actively avoid. The trap of what if, or what psychologists formally call counterfactual thinking. What if I had called sooner? What if the doctor had caught it earlier? What if things had happened differently? Why does our brain do this to us? Well, your brain is literally trying to solve a puzzle to fix the pain. But obsessively looping through hypothetical scenarios freezes the brain's natural learning process. It just fuels immense guilt and traps your neural circuits in alternate realities that simply cannot be changed. You have to gently catch your brain when it does this, because true healing requires distinguishing between genuinely learning from the past and endlessly replaying a fake hypothetical version of it. So the crucial point is, how do we proactively encourage the neuroplasticity needed to update that internal map? There are highly actionable tools based on Dr. Andrew Huberman's research that we can use. First is rational grieving. This means intentionally dedicating, say, 10 to 30 minutes a day to purely process the grief. No distractions, no trying to fix it, just structured engagement. It gives the brain a dedicated container to do the heavy emotional lifting so it doesn't bleed into every single second of your day. Second is emotional disclosure, like journaling. This takes the chaotic storm of feelings in your amygdala and forces the prefrontal cortex to organize them into coherent words. Third is morning sunlight. It sounds deceptively simple, I know, but getting bright light in your eyes early in the day actively regulates the cortisol spikes that are keeping you awake and anxious at night. It stabilizes your mood chemically. And finally, prioritizing sleep and NSDR, which stands for non-sleep deep rest. This is absolutely crucial because neuroplasticity, the actual physical rewiring of your brain's map, happens predominantly during deep sleep. These aren't just self-care buzzwords, folks. They are active biological mechanisms to help your brain redraw its map.
Section 5. Growth, not forgetting. Updating our reality without losing our connection. As we move toward a resolution here, we really have to dispel one of the most terrifying, pervasive myths about grief. There is this deep, understandable fear that if we truly heal, if we stop hurting so much every single day, it inherently means we are somehow forgetting the person we lost. That moving forward requires erasing them. Neuroscience tells us that is completely 100% false. There's a really powerful realization here. Healthy grieving does not erase memories. It updates the brain's relationship to those memories. The person you lost remains incredibly important. The deep attachment remains deeply meaningful. The ultimate goal of grieving isn't to delete their neural real estate from your mind. The goal is biological integration. It is about bringing that beautiful, profound memory into the present moment in a way that doesn't trigger constant, painful prediction errors. You keep the love entirely. You just update the expectation of their physical presence. And when we allow our nervous systems the grace, the time, and the proper tools to undergo this massive neurological update, we open the door to what psychologists call post-traumatic growth. Now, make no mistake, the loss itself is never welcome. We would all, in a heartbeat, choose to have our loved ones back. But the brain's incredible innate capacity to adapt can ultimately lead us down a profound path of transformation. Step 1. We can significantly deepen our own resilience, realizing we literally survived the unimaginable. Step 2. We can vastly increase our empathy, becoming a true beacon of understanding for others who are inevitably walking through their own dark valleys of loss. And step 3, we can find an enhanced, deeply rooted sense of purpose. When we truly understand the fragility of our biological maps, we often discover a much deeper, more urgent appreciation for the beautiful human connections we hold right now.
Which brings us to the profound thought I want to leave you with as we wrap up this exploration. How will you honor your brain's map today while giving it the grace to heal tomorrow? Remember, your grief is absolutely not a sign of weakness, and it is definitely not a dysfunction. It is the biological, undeniable proof of your brain's remarkable, expansive capacity to love and connect. It's evidence of a beautifully mapped relationship that changed the literal physical structure of who you are. So be incredibly patient with your nervous system. Give it the time, the tools, and the immense grace it needs to safely redraw its map. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep healing, and I will see you next time.